What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's Top 10 Thursday. Remember back in the day when you could buy a game and everything would already be on the disc? These times are certainly long behind us. Now it seems like companies are always trying to invent new methods to get into your wallet and get just a tiny bit more money. Sometimes they're even willing to do some stuff that is downright dirty. This week we're taking a special look at that on my picks for the top 10 biggest gaming DLC ripoffs. Number 10. Tomb of the Lost Adventurer. Normally, for each entry on these list videos, I cut in lots of random clips showing what's good or bad about a game, but for this DLC, it's so short I can almost show you the entire thing. The Tomb of the Lost Adventurer is an extra dungeon that you have to pay $3 to enter. If you're hoping to find tough puzzles, nasty traps, or horrifying new enemies, you may be sorely disappointed. This is essentially a room that you walk into, climb one rock, and walk out of. I've seen someone beat it in under 5 minutes. This really should have been a patch and not sold to fans craving a little more action. Number 9. From Ashes. By far the most evil kind of downloadable content is when it's obviously just features cut from the main project and watching it get a separate price tag put on it. Mass Effect is a very loved series, but everyone was angry when they found out that an extremely important character to the story was being placed behind a paywall. Javik is the last surviving member of a species called the Prothean. These beings crafted much of the technology that humanity discovered and is now using to travel among the stars. Seeing how he deals with the war against the Reapers and how the universe has changed in the 50,000 years since his kind ruled the galaxy is vital to the plot, and yet Electronic Arts chopped it out like bastards. Number 8. On-Disc DLC. If you ever get deep into competitive fighting games, one element you'll quickly learn that keeps people hooked for months is the introduction of new brawlers. With every deadly badass that gets dropped into the mix, you have to retrain yourself how to play to stay at peak performance. When Street Fighter X Tekken was released, there was a big group of followers hungry for any details as to what was coming next, so they dug into the code of the game and discovered that all the upcoming fighters were already on the disc. That means the developers spent years properly balancing a giant roster of heroes only to at the last minute remove a bunch of them for bonus profit. This is so screwed up that sales plummeted due to it being boycotted, and any talk of a sequel just vanished. Number 7. Horse Armor. Going back through the history of strange ripoffs, Horse Armor is often considered to be the first completely useless piece of DLC. In the modern age, the studio Bethesda is known for building some of the biggest expansions to their massive worlds, and yet their early experiment in fancy surplus features is this silly cosmetic gear for your steed. Despite making your mount look super shiny, it doesn't really serve any purpose. This won't make your horse run faster or take less damage or really anything. You're essentially handing over cash to change the paint job on your car. This by itself is pretty dumb, but the real problem is that they made so many millions off this bad idea that less creative companies started selling color swap items in their games all the time. Number 6. Map Packs. I know that nearly all my subscribers don't really enjoy Call of Duty games, but occasionally I like to check into the franchise just to see what they're up to. Last year, the developers attempted to make their hardcore old-school fans happy by remastering the 4th entry in the series since it was so legendary, but somehow they just ended up making their audience madder than ever. You'd think that rebuying a title from a decade ago, it would include every bit of the original project. Unfortunately, they left out some of the best levels from multiplayer and later sold them separately. Not only that, to make things far more ridiculous, each map is made higher priced than when they were released back in 2007. Talk about a disgusting slap in the face. Activision seems to hate the Call of Duty community and is willing to abuse them just to improve their numbers. Number 5. Steal System. There seems to be a terrible trend lately of designers trying to blur the line between microtransactions and real downloadable content. They make it so you can get new characters and weapons with in-game currency, but then make things so expensive that the only way to actually get them is to open your pockets. For Honor is quite possibly the worst example of this I've seen in a long while. Someone on Reddit calculated that if you wanted every outfit available for each warrior, you'd have to log in at least 2 hours of battle every night for 2.5 years. If you're in a big hurry to get this epic armor to boost your defenses, you could spend $732 to buy it all. What's absolutely horrible about this is that I haven't even mentioned the other weapons you can buy on top of this. The fact that you can waste over $1,000 in a single game should be illegal. Number 4. Required expansions. I think most of us are willing to pay a decent price for cool add-on content if it truly extends the fun of our experience. What can be painfully aggravating though is being basically forced to pay for DLC or you can't keep playing the game. Destiny is a fascinating title because it really grew and changed for the better after its disastrous launch, but there was one detail that kept annoying people more than anything. With the introduction of new expansions, the developers would intentionally shift their complete focus onto these freshly built areas. While this was awesome for those with the funds to keep up with releases, if you fell behind in Destiny, it became impossible to enjoy. Quest givers would be moved to new cities, raid bonuses would only be given for the new bosses, and multiplayer arenas were empty since players with the DLC played on different maps. Bungie was sending their fans a loud message: keep paying or leave now. Number 3. Catwoman. In late 2011, I was very broke, but I just started working a decent job for a couple of months, so I wanted to get something cool to reward myself. I saved up, traded some stuff in at GameStop, and did some overtime in order to have enough money to get a PlayStation 3 and Batman Arkham City. Sadly, I was slightly short of being able to afford it new, so I got a used copy. I was so happy I rushed home to play it, and yet, when I put the disc in the console, a huge warning popped up informing me that since this wasn't factory sealed, I wouldn't be able to try the Catwoman storyline. Upon hearing that, I did some research and learned that this is hours of extra content, including a totally different opening to the game. Since this was ready on release day, it's unmistakable that the publishers purposely made one of the most interesting parts of the plot shameless DLC. This 100% should have been included, and that it wasn't is a testament to the raw power of greed over the hunger to make great art. Number 2. Real ending. Selling an ending is pretty much the dirtiest crime you can commit against gamers everywhere. Imagine if you bought a book, but 300 pages in, you realize that the author had cut out the last chapter, and only by swiping your credit card could you find out if your favorite hero saved the day. That's essentially exactly what happens in Prince of Persia. At the conclusion of the final fight, our character must choose between unleashing a dark god or sacrificing one of his friends to keep him locked up again. In a bold choice, he goes with option A, freeing this creature of infinite chaos, and he runs into the desert for what we assume will be a triumphant match, only to see the screen fade to black. That's right, you have to pay an additional $10 if you want to see how this story actually ends. The Epilogue DLC is a short level that takes about 90 minutes to beat, isn't very hard, and seems to serve only one purpose: to squeeze just a couple more pennies out of us to see the ending movie. Number 1. Everything. The makers of Left 4 Dead are some of the most talented co-op programmers in the world. When it was announced that they were forming their own team to create a 4-player monster hunting shooter, people were understandably hyped. Evolve was based around the interesting concept of asymmetrical multiplayer. You'd be broken down into 2 groups, the killers and the prey. If you're assigned the task of being the beast, you need to creep around the jungle eating wildlife and growing stronger so you can wipe out the humans tracking you. It was an amazing idea that worked way better than expected, but unfortunately they couldn't resist cramming it full of downloadable content. Nearly every single item in this $60 title has a separate price tag attached to it. Do you want new gear, new monsters to fight, or a different set of clothes? Then be ready to pay every last dollar you have for it. What was incredibly stunning about this is that they had the nerve to sell a season pass for $25, but it didn't even cover a majority of this stuff anyways. Evolve was designed from the ground up to take your money, and for that reason, I am awarding this my pick as the biggest gaming DLC ripoff. Did your favorite bad DLC not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I want to dedicate this video to all the people who are currently deployed. I get a lot of messages specifically from people who are out on active duty in the military, and they say that my silly videos actually kind of help them in some small way. Just this week, a man named Justin reached out to me and thanked me for this silly content. And I wanted to thank you, Justin. I want to thank all of you for your hard work. You're out there on the battlefield, both physically and emotionally, being away from your families. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, maybe check out my last video. Please subscribe, and if you want, share this somewhere with your friends.